Hello dear students, welcome back. Today in this session we are going to study from the book Supplementary Reader, the 5th chapter, Footprints Without Feet. So let's begin with a question. Can a man become invisible? The story is about a scientist named Griffin, and he discovers the rare chemicals or drugs and the formula which can make a man invisible. And he experiments on himself and swallows some drugs to make his body transparent like a sheet of glass. And the author narrates some episodes which take place because of his invisibility. The feelings of surprise and shock are aroused among the citizens as his invisible body moves around the city. About the author, Herbert George Wells, or H.G. Wells, was born in 21st September 1866 and died on 13 August 1946. He was an English writer and was prolific in many genres, writing dozens of novels, short stories, and works of social commentary, satire, biography, and autobiography. His work also included two books on recreational war games, and Wells is now best remembered for his science fiction novels and is often called the father of science fiction. So dear students, here I am going to give you the simple explanations of the story without reading the text. Two boys suddenly noticed a few muddy imprints of bare feet. They started wondering that what was a barefoot man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London. And they also started thinking that where was the man, as he was nowhere to be seen. And they suddenly saw another footmark, and the man was still not visible. They started following the footprints, and they followed them until the footprints became invisible. The mystery of the footprints was really simple, as the boys had been following a scientist who had discovered how to make the human body transparent or invisible. It was Griffin, the scientist, who had been working for a long time to see how to make a human body invisible. Suddenly, one day, he consumed certain drugs which made his body invisible, though it could be felt. Even though he was a brilliant scientist, Griffin was a lawless person, as he had once burned down the house of his landlord, who was trying to throw him out of the house. And then, as he wanted to be invisible, he had to remove his clothes and then roam around without clothes and without money. His presence was felt after he stepped in some mud, and his footprints could be seen as he walked. Then he easily escaped the boys who had followed him, but he had many more adventures coming up. He had chosen a bad time to wander in London, as it was a winter season going on and the air was bitterly cold. He decided to stay inside a store for warmth, and as he went inside the store and closing time arrived, the doors of the store were shut down and nobody was there inside. And he got food to eat and wore new clothes without paying for it. Now he became visible again, as he wore shoes, overcoat, and a hat. He then found cold meat and coffee in the kitchen and ate them. After that, he also had sweets and wine from the grocery store. Then he slept on the pile of quills kept nearby and could not wake on time. Next morning, when the assistants came and started approaching him, he became nervous and started running away. Then the assistant started chasing him as well. He escaped only because he quickly removes his new clothes. Again he was invisible and naked, without any money, in the chill air of January. This time he decided to try the clothing of the theatrical world, as he knew that he would surely find something there to cover or hide the empty space above his shoulders, which means his face. Now he quickly reached Drury Lane, the center of the theatrical world, as he was shivering with cold. He found a shop according to his needs and entered it. Then he came out wearing bandages around his forehead, false nose, side whiskers, and a hat. Then, as he did not have any money, he attacked a shopkeeper and robbed him of all his money. Then he felt that London was too crowded and decided to go to a small village nearby, or a village called Epping. He took a train and booked 2 rooms in the local inn or hotel. The event of a stranger coming and staying at the inn in the winter night was not a normal thing to happen in Epping village, and everybody started talking about it, and it is so because Griffin looked very strange. The landlord or the landlord's wife of the inn where Griffin stayed, Mrs. Hall, made a lot of efforts to be friendly with Griffin, but he did not want to talk. Griffin clearly told her that his reason for coming to Epping was for peace and quietness, and he did not wish to be disturbed in his work. Also, he told her that an accident had affected his face, due to which he had to cover it. Now, the landlord's wife, Mrs. Holt, was satisfied, and she accepted that her new guest was a strange scientist and was ready to excuse his temper and habits, as he had paid her in advance. Then the time came when his money was over and he had no ready cash available for further payment at the inn. He had to pretend that he was waiting for a check which could arrive at any moment. Then something really strange happened. That is, the clergyman and his wife were awakened by some noises in their study room. The clergyman and his wife, when they were coming downstairs, they could hear the sound of money being taken from the clergyman's desk. The clergyman held a metal rod in his hand and flung the door open, and as soon as he opened the door, he said, "Surrender," as he thought he had caught the thief. To their surprise, they couldn't see anyone. They looked under the decks, behind the curtains, and also up the chimney, but the person was nowhere to be seen. Yet the decks had been opened and the housekeeping money was missing, or it was stolen. Then the clergyman kept on saying extraordinary affair the whole day because he was shocked by the incident. But the things that happened with Mrs. Hall's furniture were much more fascinating. Mrs. Hall and her husband woke up very early and were surprised as the door to the guest room or Griffin's room was open. Usually his room's door remained closed and locked. He used to get very angry, or Griffin used to get very angry if anyone tried entering his room. It was an opportunity and Mrs. Hall did not want to miss it. So she peeped inside from the door and they decided to investigate when they saw nobody was inside the room. His bed sheets were cold, which showed that he must have been up for a while, and also all the bandages that he used to tie around his face were lying around the room. Suddenly Mrs. Hall heard a sniff close to her ear, and Griffin's head that was lying on the bedpost flung towards Mrs. Hall and hit her on her face. Then the chair in the room dashed itself, or it became alive, hitting Mrs. Hall in her legs. As they got scared, Mrs. Hall and her husband were going out of the room when the chair closed the door, and suddenly a sound of slamming the door and locking were heard. This terrorized Mrs. Hall, and she was about to fall down from the stairs. She was convinced of the thought that there were spirits in her inn's room and that the stranger had caused this to happen. She mourned that her mother used to sit in the chair which hit her legs, and thought that how could it rise up against her. After that, the neighbors of Mrs. Hall thought that it was witchcraft which had caused such a thing to happen. When the news of the burglary at the clergyman's house reached other people in the town, everyone started suspecting the strange scientist or Griffin. Suspicion grew stronger on him when he produced ready cash or money for his payment at the inn, even though he had told some time back that he did not have money and was waiting for a check to arrive. Then the village constable or the police constable was called for secretly, but Mrs. Hall did not want to wait for him or for the constable. She went straight to Griffin. Surprisingly or mysteriously, he had appeared from the empty room at the inn. She asked him what had he been doing upstairs to her chairs and furniture. She also asked him how did he come out of the empty bedroom or entered the locked bedroom. The scientist became really angry, as he was always quick-tempered or short-tempered, and started shouting that they don't understand who or what he was, and decided to show them the truth. He removed his bandages, whiskers, spectacles, and also his nose. It took him just a minute to do all this, and the people in the bar were horrified as they looked at the headless man. Now the people in the bar were horrified as they looked at the headless man. And Mr. Jeffers, the constable of the village, was surprised as he saw that he had to arrest a man without any head. But Jeffers, the constable of the village, still wanted to do his duty, as he knew that the magistrate wanted him to arrest the person, and it did not matter that he had a head or not. A very surprising and a remarkable scene that happened was that as the policeman or the constable tried to get hold of a man or tried to catch Griffin, he started to remove his clothes. And as he threw away more and more of his clothes, he became more and more invisible. Finally, after Griffin removed his shirt, he was nowhere to be seen, and Mr. Jeffers, the constable, was struggling to arrest a man who had become completely invisible. Some people who tried helping Mr. Jeffers were also struggling as they were hit by blows from nowhere. As Mr. Jeffers made his last attempt to catch hold of the invisible man, he was knocked unconscious by the invisible man. Everybody was shouting, "Hold him!" repeatedly, but Griffin had set himself free from them and nobody could understand how to catch him. So dear students, we learned that footprints without feet brings out the misery of a brilliant scientist who adopts a lawless path upon turning invisible. His aspiration of unequal power remains unfulfilled when he becomes homeless and has to wander hungry, cold, and utterly miserable. He eventually regrets his decision as he gets alienated from the society. So students, that's all for today's class. Hope you understood the lesson. Thank you.